Hello everybody. So a big welcome back. So this possibly last lesson, there might be more, I don't know. But a very big welcome back. So I'm going to be talking about proportion in this week. Proportion, there's a lot of debate and argument about proportion. It's quite it can be very easy to get bogged down with it, and the aim of this lesson is to give you a very, very simple lesson, an introduction to it, okay? So, so far I've been teaching you something called, which I call intuitive proportion. I've just called it that, intuitive proportion. And that's basically starting point based. So you might have noticed when I was doing the drawings, I was putting my hands up and pointing. I would point to the next bit and point to the next bit and point, and my finger was sort of nearly always on the starting point, just to show you the significance and the value and the usefulness of that, so that I was trying to get you to naturally refer to the starting point. So what is proportion? Basically, it's about understanding the notion of parts to a whole. So the body is a whole unit, composed of lots of different parts, okay? So, someone says to you, for instance, "Oh, for God's sake, Caroline, get it into proportion." What do they mean? They mean that I've blown a certain part of my dilemma out of its size. So it's exaggerated. So it's out of sync with the rest of the whole. So that's what proportion. Basically, where did it begin? It began in ancient Greece, I suppose. This is very, very general. Where you had ancient Greeks trying to figure out basically how many spans was this building by how many spans, how many feet was this building by how many feet. Again, ratio of parts of the whole architecture, okay. And I suppose Vitruvius, sort of later on in very ancient Greek, Vitruvius, sorry, I don't have what's his date? 81 BC, there you go, author, architect, engineer. He started this theory of actually organising proportion in relationship to the human body, which was then taken over by Leonardo. And you must have seen this drawing before. It's quite an iconic drawing. It's like the yin yang sign, it's very iconic. So what is it? Basically, we're looking at a man. I don't know if you can see it closely, but basically the width, the sum width of this man, from span to span, from fingertip to fingertip, is exactly the same as his height. So the width of the entire hand span from fingertip to fingertip with arms outstretched is the same as the entire of his from top to bottom, which is so surprising. I find that so surprising. We all do. So basically that tells us that the arms are much longer than you think. It's quite common to draw the arms a little bit too short. They actually come down, into the upper thigh. It's quite astonishing. Another thing that astonishes me is how big hands are. The entire hand is the entire of the face. This is, proportions so full of surprises. But I fear that I'm bogging you down already. It's very prescriptive proportion. This is the problem. It's very prescriptive, and it's almost sort of dictating your vision. And the thing is, with the avant-garde, with modern art, with the evolution of modernism, the problem is they just got so restricted by it. It was so idealised, it got so developed. There must be 7 heads to the body, there must be so many hands to the, this measurement to this measurement. And, everything was very oversensitive, overdressed, not exaggerated, but over ideals. It's idealisation. And I think in Victorian, it was the early Victorian art, suddenly everyone got tired of it because everything was very centred and very over-arranged and very restricted. So basically modernism came along and threw the whole thing out, the baby with the bathwater, everything. And I believe it's the same as anatomy. Again, that was, all that academic or all that study going right back to Leonardo, chucked out of the window, thrown out with the bathwater. I don't think we need to. I'd like to reclaim some of it. But what I say to my students actually is learn a little bit, understand it, but use it to provoke your vision. Use it to awaken your vision. So when you're looking at the model, you draw it as it is, not in accordance with any prescriptive rule. Okay, you draw what you see, warts and all. You draw what you see. Okay, so Leonardo believed there were 7 heads to the body. Okay, I'm going to show you this one. I don't know if it's too big, you can see, but you can see this drawing, this very simple drawing. You can see there's the head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 heads to the body. That's Leonardo's, actually probably the most accurate. If he was standing, if you had a figure standing in that deadpan way, yeah, probably 7 heads to the body. And then we have, for instance, Michelangelo, who had 8 heads to the body. Then we had El Greco, who decided there were 12 heads to the body. Basically, if a model was coming right towards you, if a model was lying down, there may only be 1 head of the body. If a model was coming right towards you and stooping down, there may be 2.5 heads to the body. If you're trapped by all of this, you can get a little bit tied into a knot. So what I do with proportion, you can decide for yourself. Some people really love it and I really, really respect them. But what I do with proportion, I do measure. I'm going to teach you how to measure. With proportion, I use it as a way to check myself. So if I do get something out of proportion, I will then pick up my pencil and start to measure, which I'm going to teach you in a minute. This is another picture by Leonardo. I rather like. You can very easily find. It's very iconic. Again, you can find it online, which talks about the proportion of the head. I've often talked about. You see this line coming across here. This line coming across here, having a halfway line across the head, across the face, which is actually runs through the pupils of the eyes, clips the top third of the ears. So that really helps me when I'm actually drawing my head. And then the nose is again halfway, roughly, the base of the nose to the mouth. And just drawing those few lines, oh gosh, it saves ages, it saves a lot of time. It's quite useful. So also, I'm thinking if I was going to draw a rectangle, I was going to do this first. And divide it into sub-squares. In fact, I've done it rectangles by mistake. But that is just the same, if you can see that. That's 3 parts to 1 whole, okay? So if that was a building, a piece of architecture, and it was designed like that, the proportions would be 3 parts to 1 whole, okay? So just the same as Leonardo's head, 3 parts to 1 whole, 7 parts to 1 whole in terms of Leonardo. And one more thing, I was just talking about, I didn't quite plan this, but I realised I probably should have done it. This idea of a head, which I often teach actually, is, if you can imagine the head is just, it's not a square, it's not an oval, it's actually a 3-dimensional shape, so there's a certain curvature. But if I show you this simple head, you've got this line running down the axis of the face. I often draw the centre point of the axis, and then the eye. So the eye line, surprisingly, runs through the pupils of the eyes. It's quite low down. You always think it's up there, but you're not taking into account from here to here. So heads, also if I was, for instance, to look down, can you feel there's an ellipse? If I have this jar, the ellipse goes down. It's doing that. If my head was to look up, the ellipse would come up. So that the curvature of that line. I hope I'm not confusing you. It's probably confusing you. I don't want to get too bogged down into heads, but that's so that's how the heads work. Okay, so have I covered it all? I think I have. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go to some actual measuring. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to measure. This is a little bit of a challenge. I think I've set myself probably too much of a challenge to make this work, but let's just try. Okay, it's just this sort of situation. If you can just get some way towards understanding, that would be great. So I don't have a model and I don't have a photograph even. I only have a drawing to measure from. So this is like a sort of slight double compromise, and also I just don't know if you can see what I'm doing. So again, I'm going to, in fact I didn't show you this. This is what I call an Alberti's veil. I just made it out of sewing threads from left to right, little graph. And then you can see quite nicely, I don't know if you can see with this drawing, you can see quite nicely what's on the line. You just look through it and you can see how various forms appear on lines, and you can say, oh, for instance, this elbow is actually on the same line as that armpit. So you can see lines, and you'll be doing that with the pencil. So basically I see people when I come into the room sort of doing this, and oh, there must be 7 heads in the body, and doing, no. You can't start a measured drawing without a starting point, okay? It's still the same theory as the intuitive proportion. You still need a starting point. Otherwise you've got nothing in charge. You need something in charge. You need a starting point. You need the captain of the ship, okay? It's like the first piece of the puzzle. It's the first component part. And then, you know, once you've got that first part, then you can start slotting in the other parts one by one by one by one, okay? So, you know, if you're measuring this to that, or that to this, or this to that, you get this kind of paradox of chaos. So you need one part that's unchangeable in command of the drawing, okay? So I'm going to draw at quite an odd angle, so this might not be my best. I don't know if you can see me, camera, can you see me? So I'm going to start the drawing. I'm pretending this is the model actually. I could use this one. So I'm starting the drawing. I mean, you can, if it really helps, you can sort of do the Pin Man again, but I don't actually, but if that makes you feel better, then that's absolutely fine. So I'm now looking at this drawing. And this is my most sort of sensitive and uncomfortable bit of the drawing, the starting point. Sorry, I don't know if you can see if I keep my body to the left so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm starting this starting point. I'm just looking at the model only again. So there we go. And then so, right, don't race on, Caroline, come on, get that starting point. So now I'm going to continue a little bit. I could do a little bit of shading, and I will not leave that starting point. That way actually. I'm not going to leave that starting point until I'm absolutely sure. I'm happy. I feel much more confident actually working from the original picture, but there we go. It's alright, you can rub out. I'm expecting you to rub out. I'm glad I'm rubbing out because it's showing you the right process. So, where's my charcoal? Here we go, starting point. So, so now I've kind of, I hope that's clear enough. So now I've got that shoulder. Yeah, I'm fiddling around, aren't I? Get on with it, can I? Okay, so now I've got the shoulder. So there's the shoulder, there's the shoulder. I quite like that as a starting point because it's an area, it's a junction, it's an area of clarity. And I feel I can have a really good sort of measurement system from there to there, for instance. So to move on, okay, I'm going to do it as a measure check actually. So I'm going to move on. I'm just going to show you in terms of a measure check. So I'm sort of moving across. So I am drawing quite freely at the moment, and I'm going to measure in a second. Um, right, fine. Yeah, now I feel a bit more confident. It's funny, isn't it? You just have to have the starting point. Right, so there is my starting point. This is my head. I hope you can see that clearly. That's my head, shoulder, shoulder, relating to this drawing. So let's say, I just wonder if that hip is in the right place. So I don't know if you can do this with me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this measurement down, so from here to here, down, and then see what's kind of on that line, and if you can do that with me. So I don't know if you've got a pencil with you, if you can have a pencil handy. Shall I give you a moment to get a pencil? Grab a pencil, grab a pen, grab anything long, chopstick if you're in a Chinese house, whatever, anything long. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to align the pencil. I'm standing always in the same place. If you can see me, always in the same place. I'm going to put my arm out. There's no point in doing it like this all the time. Always out straight. I'm going to close my left eye. Looks kind of a bit pretentious, but it's not. Close my left eye. I'm going to align this. I'm not drawing with this. I'm going to align the top of the pencil, okay, with the top of the drawing. Can you do it with me? I want you to do it with me. And then the thumb is like a gauge. It's like a little measure gauge. So I'm going to run the thumb down. So this is aligned with the top of here, which is very close to me, quite far from you. I'm running the thumb down to basically where my measurement's going to stop, which is sort of, actually I'm making it clear on the drawing here. So it's sort of, this is my measure thing, okay, my measure, what I'm dictating from, okay. So there's my my example, okay, that's my starting point. And now, okay, I'm going to move away from it, so you're all still doing, now move the whole measurement down one, okay, right. So now I know that I'm kind of there, okay, in my mind. So I know that I'm kind of there, and I'm going to move it across, and I notice, just move the pencil across, and I notice that it's kind of in a line with that. So one measurement of that down, the base is sort of aligned with that, gives me the information. And then, a lot of people then make the mistake of actually applying the knowledge size. Then you just put you put the learning in your head. You put the learning in your head. So I know for sure that one of those measurements down and along that line, I get that negative shape of space. So then you look at the drawing and you apply the knowledge to the drawing. I hope I'm making sense. I know, I hope you're not befuddled. Don't panic if you are. So there we go. Let's do it again. So, you've measured down, measured across, moved your eye across. So now I know, if I draw a line, I'm hitting the bottom of that negative shape of space. Now I'm applying the knowledge. I'll take one down, draw a line. I'm hitting the bottom of that negative shape. So good news, Caroline, you're correct. I thought it was too high. It's not. Carry on the drawing. Okay, so that was my measure check there. I wonder, what else could we do? I've often wondered about this arm with this drawing. This arm, what's that lying across? This arm. So let's do one. Actually, that's a really good thing. If you just get into the habit of just doing that and finding what's on the line. Let's see where this arm fits in relationship to the other side of the. So if you close your left eye, okay, I'm going to go close your left eye. In fact, you don't even need to use the gauge. Let's just see what's on the line. And I find, looking at the line, you've got your left eye closed, what's on the line of that. So this elbow just clips the top tiny little chunk of that negative shape of space. So if I draw a line on this elbow, it should, oh gosh, this isn't right, is it, with this drawing? This is wrong. This arm should be actually a bit higher up. There you go. So I tell myself, So this is the reality. I'm pretending this is the model. This is my drawing. Gosh, I've got that arm too low. I've learnt that. So I put the information in my head. I've learnt it, process it, and actually put the arm. I'm going to move it up. Where was it? Sorry. I could just look at the drawing. Actually, yep. It's about there. It was about there. Fine. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's rub it out so you can see. So then I've moved my arm up and it's actually more close to there. So let's just have a look. You can look at it with a ruler, actually, what's on the line. So this arm, if I run the line, is level with, it clips the top third of that negative shape of space. It clips the top third of that, yes, that's clear, isn't it? Clips the top third of that. So sort of what's on the line, in fact, if you can just get used to the idea of simply working what's on the line, I fear that I haven't been quite clear enough with actually doing how many down. It's just this particular drawing, I can't find anything that's particularly easy to move down. I can only find things to compare. Compare, that's another thing. Compare is a real buzzword with proportion. You're lost, something's blown out of proportion, so you are comparing what is wrong to the starting point. You're comparing, so I've got the leg wrong. Oh God, how does it relate to the starting point? Now let me compare the starting point. So the starting point is that big, that particular limb or leg or whatever, I'll compare it to the starting point is that big. A really good one, let's say, I'm just going to quickly get the hand in. Sorry, again, I'm drawing at a distance so the camera can see me and you can see me. So another thing, let's get that hand in. Another thing, particularly I'd like you to do with hands. So I'm just getting this hand in. Not only where it is, but how big it is. So let's compare, sorry I haven't finished it. Come on Caroline, finish it. So there's the hand. That's the mitten shape of the hand. I'm not particularly interested in fingers at all. Let's say this is my hand. So I'm worried that my hand is too small, too big. That's my starting point. That's what's dictating everything. So what I'm going to do is I can either compare the hand to it or it to the hand. Usually the smaller of the limbs is a better comparison. So now let's do it together. If you can close your left eye, okay, stand at arm's length or sit at arm's length, align the top of the pencil with the top of the hand. Are you aligning it? I'm aligning it. Run your thumb down like a gauge to the bottom of the hand, okay. Then bring the whole measurement up to the starting point, okay? And to me, comparing to that starting point, which is between here and here, the hand, that tells me from there to there, the hand is smaller by about a centimetre. That was quite clear, wasn't it? So then I put the information in my head. This is where people forget. They don't know what to do with this. I put the information in my head. I know now that that hand is smaller than my starting point by a little bit. So I've got that knowledge now. And then I'm going to go back to the drawing. So there's my starting point. What's a bit smaller than my starting point? That. I'll take it to the hand, and it's about correct actually. It's fine. I should have drawn it wrong so that you can see. So I'd love to do it a few times, but with this particular film, I quite like you to play it a few times if you can bear it when you've got time afterwards, so that you can get it. And if you still haven't, I know some people just get really blocked with it, and I'm not going to get sort of feisty about it. But if there's anything that you can take away from this, session, I want you to understand how important the starting point is, how significant it is. So even if we can get you doing intuitive proportion, so drawing that starting point and then putting your finger on and moving across and relating the second bit of the puzzle to it, the third bit of the puzzle to it, the fourth bit of the puzzle, the fifth, the component parts that all together make this very balanced whole. Okay, so I can, I can get very stuffy with Leonardo. I can get very stuffy with the, there's 100 plethora of YouTube videos about proportion, but even I found myself slightly tied in knots. And geometry as well. The golden section of geometrical theories to it. But I think if you want to sort of I think just don't get bogged down too much. Just keep to the basics, keep to the starting point, and if you can actually measure your tooth mug, I'm just thinking of something in your bathroom, your tooth mug every day when you go to bed, not when you wake up, you won't do it, you'll be in a hurry, but when you go to bed, just measure your tooth mug. Let's pretend this is the tooth mug. How many widths in the tooth mug, so I'm simply comparing, locking this onto the side, moving my hand down like a gauge, and I'm comparing it to the length. How interesting. It's almost the width of this jar is the same as, actually no, it's one and a half. So comparing this to that, but then that sort of deprives you of a starting point. You'd have to decide what was the starting point. You're not going to draw it, you're just learning how to measure, learning how to compare things. I just thought I'd make it easier. I didn't quite, it took a lot of thought this, as to whether it was going to confuse you doing it from a drawing and not the model and not a photograph. So I've done something else which I'd like you to do, is I've just wrapped a tin in a white piece of sort of computer filing paper to create a simple rectangle. And what I'd quite like you to do is, again, I'm going to start the drawing. Okay, I'm looking at the model. It's not the model, it's looking at the cuboid only a little bit. Just trying to get that. Do you know what? I want to get that angle. Okay, it's kind of there. Good. The start of that. So I'm just kind of starting. It sort of comes down a little bit actually. This. So yeah, I'm not really obeying my own rules. So this is my basically starting point. There's a nice piece of shadow going there. So again, I'm using this system as a way of checking. I'm not using this quite the Uglo technique, which is to measure everything, but I'm using it as a checking system. So I quite like to know, quite interestingly, let's make it clear for you, like the distance between here and here. You see my two arrows? So what I'm going to do is compare from this bit to this bit. I want to know how many of these are in the entire shape, okay? So this was kind of like my starting point. I'm going to pretend that's my starting point. So I don't know if you can do this with me. It might be different from your point of view. This is what worries me. But I'm closing my left eye. Can you see me? Close my left eye. Always my arm is at arm's length. Aligning the top of the instrument with the top of the form. Running my thumb down to where I want it to. It's not quite here inconveniently. It's sort of slightly up from there, but I'm going to just take it, pretend it's there. I mean this bit, and I want to know how many. Not really pretending anything. Don't worry. How many? 1, 2, 2. So now I know there's 1, 2 of those. 1, 2 of those measure points. So the distance between here and here is 2 of those measure points, okay? So 1, 2, actually it's a bit lower down than I thought. Fine, lower down than I thought. 1, 2, so that would be about halfway, 1, 2. So that's 2, so that means that, so I put the information in my head, okay, there's 1, 2, done a little mark, and now, hooray, I can go on drawing. I can just I can continue the drawing. I can go on with the drawing. I can do a little bit of tone, and there's this gorgeous piece of shadow coming here. I can enjoy the drawing. So let's say I felt, actually I'm feeling this. I'm wondering what the distance this distance is actually, whether that's correct. I could do that with my starting point as well. I'm asking myself, I could actually measure it rather sort of from there to there rather than from there to there. So we could do that. So let's do it from there to there, for instance, rather than, because it could be wrong. So I'm going to align, I'm going to compare. It's sometimes you wonder whether you're using the starting point as with the gauge, or you're using the form itself as your gauge. But I tend to use the smaller item, either the starting point or, but I find this area is likely to be smaller, so it's easier to compare. So I'm closing my left eye, putting my pencil out at arm's length, locking this onto the edge of the form, moving my gauge of my thumb to the right, moving the whole measurement up to my starting point area, which is from there to there. And how extraordinary. I'm finding it very similar, it's the same. So compute the knowledge into your head. I know that the distance from between there and there is the same as the distance between there and there, almost the same. So, gosh, it's actually could be a bit wider. This line could be a bit wider, so this could go a bit out of it, so this line could be a bit wider. Is it the same? Yes, not that wide, it's about, that would be it. Sorry, it's becoming rather a messy drawing full of my alterations. So I hope that makes sense. Sorry, it's not the best drawing I've done, but it's more the learning that you're getting from it. What I'd love you to do, what I'd love you to do as an exercise is, if you can do, if possible, find an object in your house. It could be a cereal packet, it could be a Marmite jar, it could be a maybe not translucent, something. And if it's, this in fact was a tin of tea, and I just wrapped it in white paper just so that you could see the form very clearly. But it, actually you could make it more interesting. You make a really nice drawing out of it. You could just, anything, a tin, something, and then do a drawing of it, and just start comparing, measuring, measure checking. Just try and measure check everything. Measure check, measure check, measure check. Do it again and again and again and again until you've got it. Every morning, every evening, when you do your teeth, measure your tooth mug again. If the more you do it, the more it's just, you realise how easy it is. It's like riding a bike, or you can't unlearn it once you've learnt it. And it's not as dry as you think it is. And I'm not going to make you do these kind of dot to dot super measured drawings when you get back, but I just want to equip you with that experience of knowing how to measure check your drawing, and if anything, just realising the value of the starting point. So a drawing of that, a drawing from the photographs. If you can look at the photographs, that's much easier as well, much more fun. Look at the photographs of the models, do a really good starting point, and do a beautiful measured drawing down. Do 2 or 3, whatever the time allows. But thank you, this has been such fun, and I hope you enjoy it.